right. And then if you would like, you should probably follow along by clicking on my screen share. You'll see my screen share is showing in Discord there. What's up, everybody? If you're joining us on YouTube, hello and welcome. We're just kind of getting started here. We got a bunch of folks jumping into Discord here. I have a transcript running in the background because, of course, if we're talking about AI, the AI should be listening. And I imagine some more folks will jump in. We had some permissions issues with Discord, so hopefully that's all squared away now. And we're going to run through this. If you're watching on YouTube and you're interested in joining the conversation, there's a link in the description of the video as well as in the comments. You can join the Discord and jump in live with us as we carry on with the discussion, and we'll continue to kind of touch base there. If you don't and you'd like to just jump in and chat, I see there's about 13 of you watching now. So if you'd like to just share a comment, I'll try to keep an eye on the comment as the conversation goes. There's about a 7-second delay, but we'll try to keep an eye on some of that in case you want to interject into the conversation. And yeah, let's go through this. So I'm going to jump into my screen share here. So if you're watching, if you're in Discord, you should be able to see my screen. Feel free to shout out if you can't. Let me move this over here so I can see you all. Okay. And I'm just going to run through and set up the conversation here. So the goal is to have some candid conversations about how AI is shaping society in real time, but not just AI, technology in general. I'm a tech head. Lots of you are tech heads. Lots of us are building different things. And so the goal, and this has been for a while, I've been talking to some of you about, like, just let's get some smart folks into a room together and discuss kind of what's going on all around us and how that's affecting society and culture. So that's what we're here to do. Run of show. The event is scheduled from 7 to 8:30. I don't know that we'll go all the way to 8:30. So if the conversation is going real strong, we could go beyond that. Feel free to leave at any time. But if the conversation is kind of fizzling out, we may drop this thing a little after 7. So at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half. We'll play it by ear from there. I'll take the first 15-ish minutes or so to lay out the vision, which is what I'm doing now, and start the conversation with a few things to think about. And then from there, we'll jump into some bookmarks and news articles and different things. And we'll talk about the current zeitgeist a little bit. And from there, the conversation will just go wherever it goes. We've got some smart folks in the room. If you're in the audience and you'd like to jump up on stage, feel free to jump up. I think we have room for a few more up on stage. And yeah, we'll take it from there. So a handful of goals real quick is just to discuss these topics. We've talked about that, smart people talking about what's going on with the web. But there's some secondary and third goals here. We're recording this. I'm now recording this, but it was being sent to YouTube the whole time. But this is a good reminder for me that we're recording this. And part of what my mission is to, like, I often find myself sharing interesting metaphors or cool stories or fun news articles with friends, and them sharing stuff with me in a way that's, like, only useful for us. And so I thought if we could kind of build the conversation around this and record some of this, maybe it's useful to share on social media. As we move along, there will be opportunities for you all to lead segments also. And so maybe you get clips, we get clips. And this starts becoming like a little flywheel. I'll talk a little bit about kind of the media experiment part of this as we get a little further as well. Okay, and then connecting a community of creators. I know a lot of people that are building cool stuff. I have, I'm building infrastructure for, like, a private web and a more decentralized local first web. I know people who are building all sorts of products in the AI space, in the web design space, in the accounting space, just all over the internet, designers, developers. And so, like, there's a lot of cool people and a lot of connections inside of this network that I think we could build more on. Even the other thing is, like, we have the Sarasota Tech Network forming here locally, but there's a broader community kind of at a larger scale that I've been building and tinkering with over the years. And so how do we merge some of those? How do we kind of bring some cohesion between a global and a localized community, which is you're going to see as a re-emerging thread throughout what we talk about here. So partly because distribution is the new moat. Maybe you've heard this if you're in tech or you're building software. It's getting very difficult to kind of elevate above the noise. It's getting easier and easier to build software, but that means more and more people are building tools. And so if you're a builder, if you're a software developer, if you're somebody who's tinkering on the web, it becomes very difficult to kind of elevate, your signal amongst a sea of all this noise. And so while most projects starts with, like, rigid software and, like, a very defined focus for, like, what they want to do, and then they start building users, our goal is to flip that script a little bit and see if we can start building the audience and getting momentum around an idea, and then start using the cohesion around this group, the feedback from this group, the creativity and the resources that we discover to maybe define what features we want to build, or as you'll see, certain projects, may get an opportunity to present. Can we make sure we're muted on the back end, please? Thank you. Gene, I think if you could, I'll mute you now. Yes. So anyway, I have a full-time job with a company that's building some really cool software that I'd love to introduce. Some of you are building products that I'd love to introduce also. So part of that is going to be figuring out, like, can we help each other with distribution as we kind of participate in this project? So again, part think tank, part media experiment. We'll use community to drive innovation across various projects and different stakeholders while documenting the impact. And I think that's a big thing, is there's going to be a story that evolves here. It's not just going to be like the news that we cover or the bookmarks that we're talking about in the moment. There's going to be this other story that evolves behind the scenes of the products that are building, the relationships that are forming, the learning that we do, the things that we make, and like tying that together over time maybe becomes some cool meetups, some cool in-person events. And so how can we document this whole story kind of as we build and tinker together online? And so with that, I'm going to get to the premise of these 3 dots I'm trying to connect. I've kind of mentioned some of these, but for years, for more than a decade, I've had a passion for like curating information and sharing that information. If you look throughout my past, there's, I started blogging that led to learning web design, that led to getting into video, that led to like leading a marketing agency, that grew into working with Webflow and doing lots of like community building projects across the globe and online and blah, 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 blah. I've just kind of been obsessing with like, how do you become a filter for the internet? How do you kind of build, a lot of us curate and intake information, but how do we make that accessible to other people? And more specifically, how do we own the output, right? Most of what we see on the internet has kind of been consumed by large tech companies. And so how do we use these digital tools to drive real world impact on a local scale? And we're going to dive into each of those 3 things. So again, I talked about my background for, curation and kind of digesting information, building these filters. I started and failed at a startup along the way, but what's been consistent along the way has been like the community side of it, right? The software's never really worked out, but the community side and the impact that we've had using some of these tools has always been meaningful. And so I guess that's why I keep coming back to like figuring out the curation side, because the community side keeps taking, but more and more. But I think as AI starts to pick up, we start to be overwhelmed with all of this content and all of this noise. And so this human filtration layer, this human curation layer, helping people figure out where the signal is versus the noise across this whole network is going to be very important in the next handful of years as AI starts to pick up. And the biggest issue, I think, is like digital ownership. We seem to be building like this digital feudal state. And you'll hear me talk about a lot as we move forward as it relates to this. But basically the concept is that we don't own anything on the web, right? We are the lifeblood behind the social networks, behind everything that happens on the internet is kind of like powered by human intelligence, at least at this point. And even after the machines become intelligent, there's still going to be the human connection layer and like us living in this layer that needs to exist. And I think in order for us to have a free society, we have to start thinking about how to build infrastructure that allows us to kind of give ownership to the audience, to the network, to the people themselves. Again, if you think about like what made America great or what makes the West great is this idea that like you have a right to property ownership. And that's a tenet that we've discovered long ago, that to have a free and stable society, you need to own property. And online, we don't follow the same rules. And I'm wondering, what can we do with technology and as a community to start thinking about, ownership online? This is part of what I do as, my day job with a company called DXOS. We're building infrastructure that is about digital ownership, but so are lots of people. And it'd be interesting to start talking about those projects. I know blockchain comes up a lot. How does that blend with AI? And so part of this is going to be like weaving, again, this curation layer, this filtration layer with like, how do we own some of what we do? And also then how do we take the impact of that and point it at real world problems, right? A lot of, people are pie in the sky when they think about technology. They start talking about global this, global that. Same thing with politics. They worry about what's going on in Washington, D.C., but they have no idea what's happening locally. I think that human networks and successful digital systems as we move into the future must root themselves in the real world, in humanity. And if you think about how some of the biggest tech startups have become successful over the years, they very often started with a small, meaningful like thing in a localized spot. Airbnb, come sleep on my couch, and that scales with other people with couches. Now, they're competing with hotels all over the world. Uber, same thing. Let me drive you around town. Now they've got cars in every city. They all started locally before they started scaling. And I think local first software and privacy preserving software and things that aim to establish like communication mechanisms at scale first need to start small. And so this is the beginning of that experiment of us figuring out how can we start small, doing some of these things, and then working together to build the next layer of whatever this thing becomes. So those are the 3 dots that I aim to connect, or that we're trying to connect with this. And then somewhere sprinkled inside of this is this Sarasota Tech meetup, which I don't know how it plugs in fully to this vision yet. But it is an experiment that we've been working with locally in the community. Some of you in the audience today are coming from the Sarasota community. Some of you are coming from the broader web community. And local meetups and local connections have always been a big part of my vision as well. So as long as I've been thinking about curating and filtering information online, I've also been thinking about communities and meetups and events and things like that. And so those 2 things in my head go hand in hand, as well as community. And so thinking about how to like take these digital tools and create real world impact is like at the top of my head and will be for this experiment. And if you're not in Sarasota, it would be very interesting to then figure out how can we support you in your local space to do something like this, to mimic this. Can we create software or tools that maybe are useful for you as we grow and as this goes? So why make this process public? Why film this? Why stream it? Why do any of this? And I talked about that a little bit, mostly to record the conversations for anyone who wants to keep up but can't make it live. I'll publish these as a podcast on YouTube as full-length videos. We're also going to break them up into short-form content, like I mentioned before. And if you present, or if you have a clip, or if you have something interesting that you share, maybe we'll give you a clip, and that way you can share it. And so we'll maybe have different vectors for how this thing gets distributed. And it doesn't all have to be on one centrally owned web property anymore. We've kind of seen that. And so the value of this network can become totally decentralized as other people start sharing these clips, as you maybe step up as a leader or as somebody who contributes on a weekly basis and you bring interesting topics. Maybe you start getting clips from the show, and that becomes another distribution vector for us. And as we grow and point back and around to each other, who knows how that again works to increase our attention and reach on the internet. At the bottom here, I have this: what is a media company? What is a corporation? Will it still look the same in 5 to 10 years? We're going to get into this a lot, but if you think about what a media company is or what a corporation is, it's really just a group of people working together under a legal umbrella towards like a shared initiative. In the media context, as a journalist, they have journalists and editors and whatever, and they kind of shape media. But under corporation, they typically build products or things for the market. But I'm not sure those 2 things will like look the same in 5 years, 10 years. And if you think about what a digital chamber of commerce is, it's a group, a business association that basically takes dollars from a bunch of businesses in a geographic or special interest area, and they work to improve that ecosystem and build benefits for the businesses and advocate for positions that are pro-business. But it's kind of like an old model. And I think in this new model, they haven't really kept up with like what they could do for digital businesses, right? So as you think about all these new digital businesses and freelancers and people who are growing and building different things, what does it look like for them to collaborate at scale, maybe under some kind of nonprofit style entity, and build value together as a distribution engine, as a business network, as a corporation or media company? Or like, I don't know what the difference is between some of those lines. And so again, part of this experiment is exploring those relationships and how these things line up. So, okay, that's all I got to say to get the show started. Where are we at? I did pretty good. 15 minutes was my goal. I think I'm just under that. We got a little code of conduct, and then we're just going to open this up to whoever wants to play. Nothing is off limits in this topic, right, in this show. The goal is not to get overtly political, but technology runs through everything. AI runs through everything. People feel some sort of way about this and that and the other. So it's inevitable we're going to step on toes. We're going to get, into the weeds. We're going to talk about things that you might find controversial. That's okay, right? Like that's hopefully the goal here. What we do want to stay away from is any kind of name calling or personal attacks, anything like that. We'll be quick with the mute button or quick with kicking and banning people who, obviously don't want to play nice by those rules. The disagreements, if you have any, should be focused on ideas, not people, is what we're really trying to say. Anyone can raise their hand to speak, but try not to cut folks off when they're speaking, and try not to just be the one that's taking all the limelight. We'll do our best to moderate all of that, and we reserve the right to mute or ban or kick anyone from the server as this goes. This is open to the public, so who knows what could happen at any time. Be warned. What is it, like the most entertaining outcome is often the most likely outcome, is one of my favorite quotes, and so I expect things to get a little hairy at times as we go through this. And that's it. I think I got one more slide, but I don't remember what it is. Oh yeah, future format ideas. And we can talk about this as we go. But again, going back to the filtration and curation, how do we over the course of the week, let's say, or over the course of an ongoing basis, share articles with each other, share notes with each other? I don't know if it's a WhatsApp group. I don't know if it's here in Discord, but ideally, I would like this conversation not to end when we turn the stream off or the video off at the end of this call. I would like this conversation to spill out into our weekly flow, our weekly lives. And so as you find an interesting article and you bookmark it, you share it with us with a little thought about what's going on. Eventually, I like the idea of those things being surfaced, and then we can either vote or prioritize those before the show. And then essentially this show becomes self-curated by the audience and topics that you want to suggest. If you suggest a topic, maybe you can lead the conversation on that topic, which will lead to you getting the video to share again across your network. And then we'll set some kind of timer for each topic. So we won't do that today. We don't have any formal structure for how we're going to manage the show today. So we'll just probably share it in the chat, share it in the comments, whatever you want to talk about, however things go, whatever your thoughts are. We'll just kind of play it by ear today. But just know that as we go, we'll try to formalize this process and make it a little more cohesive. So with that, we'll just dump this. I'll go back over here. I see we got a nice little crowd here. Hello. Oh yeah, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to a few folks that are up on stage here. Colleen and Daniel. If Colleen has been doing these types of things with me for a long time, and glad to have her kind of here on the side. She'll help keep us on track and also fact check and proofread and break things every once in a while. So hi, Colleen.
Thanks for the warm words. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, let me stop my screen share. And over the course of this, I'll probably also share, and we'll dive across the web. I have a bunch of bookmarks here that we can explore as we get into this. So again, who knows where this is going to go, but we'll try to keep it interactive. Daniel, what's up, brother, in the house? Daniel has been a longtime friend also. We've been talking about this for a while. I'm excited to have him kind of help co-host, and he'll be in the background also moderating and helping collect links and giving insight. He's a super talented, creative, and tinker as well. So what's up, Daniel?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Good to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, and one more quick shout out to the folks. If you're watching on YouTube, what's up, Kev? If you're watching on YouTube and you want to join in, there's still some links. The link is in the description of the video and pinned in the comments. You can join us here in Discord. I'd also like to give a shout out to Lou. Lou has been a mentor and friend for many years now, and most recently helping me with some of my vibe coding stuff. He's also been super active in the Sarasota tech community, and just always willing to be a volunteer, and smart guy, deep background in tech and software development. And yeah, we're lucky to have him. So what's up, Lou? Oh, I don't think I'm getting audio from you, Lou, for some reason. Nope, no audio from Lou. All right, we'll come back to Lou. I got Tyler Moses in the house also. What's up, Tyler Moses? Tyler's a good friend of mine, video editor, talented creative, done lots of different cinematography and filmmaking over the years, and will be helping us figure out how to turn some of this into media. So what's up, Tyler in the house? And Rick, you're up here, but I don't think I know too much about you. So we're going to put you on the spot right immediately and just have you say hi and yeah, introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, I'm up here because you put us all up here and I didn't leave. So my name is Rick Dakin. I teach at Ringling College of Art and Design, where I have taught creative writing for the last 9 years, but for the last year, I've also been the AI coordinator, overseeing our AI certificate program and sort of our AI art and innovation symposium that we run in October. I just came back from presenting at the Teaching and Learning with AI conference in Orlando, which was last week, where I presented with Anthropic and with a research colleague of mine from the University College Cork in Ireland, where we've developed some educational offerings around understanding AI and teaching with it and just engaging with it. So,
Nice.
yeah, and I've been to 3 or 4 of the tech meetups, but those are so busy and crowded. I don't think our paths have crossed in there, but I've enjoyed my time at those.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. I see some other folks have joined us up on stage. And what's up, Gene? I think I did mute a few of you, so let me see. You may not be able to unmute. Try to keep yourself muted unless you're talking, just so we don't have background interference while other folks are talking. And since we're streaming this, we want to try to keep the audio as clean as possible. But yeah, Rick, you said you're at Ringling. Tell me more. You said you were presenting at a symposium. What was the?
It's the third year. It's the Teaching and Learning with AI conference is where I just was last week, which is hosted by the University of Central Florida. It's for higher ed. We had I think this year they capped out 950 attendees, something like 8 different tracks over the 2.5 days. I was there presenting this. I guess I'll put it in chat and you can share it or not, or look at it or not.
Yeah.
A framework for AI fluency that my colleague Joe Feller from University College Cork in Ireland's Business and Information Technology program have been developing for our AI courses. I've been teaching with generative AI at Ringling for 2 years now, and this is the result of those experiences of using AI in a creative context in the classroom. And earlier this year, we teamed up with Anthropic to create a free online course going through this framework. So the introductory version of that course went live last week. That's what we were announcing and talking about at the Teaching and Learning with AI conference. And then there's a fuller version coming at the end of the summer. But this free course, 3 or 4 hours to complete, about 70 minutes of video. And it's all Creative Commons. You're free to use it and reuse it with attribution and employ it in sort of any way that seems interesting. So we're in sort of soft launch phase. I want to share an AI story of Claude. Obviously, we used Claude a lot with this. And we were at the conference and someone had posted about it just on some tech blog, some tech and education blog. And we said, hey, Claude, what do you think of this? We showed the link to it. And it gave the analysis and then said, I think that this is probably part of a soft launch strategy that Anthropic is using, and that there's probably something bigger coming, but they want to seed it out there. And because it was linked off my co-author's LinkedIn. And so that was a classic Claude moment, or AI moment in general, of it being weirdly and eerily insightful there at the hotel bar.
Yeah, I think this is probably like a perfect intro here. And we didn't prompt this or plan this, but AI fluency is probably, a big deal right now. It's just people kind of understanding what's happening. So maybe we can start the conversation with that. Like, do people just want to share a little bit about, I've been blown away recently with especially the agentic coding. I use Replit a lot. I probably spent $600 last month on Replit services, agentic code development. And I think they're using Claude models in the background. I think Claude has one of the top models for software development. And so, yeah, maybe we just want to start with, what are you using AI for, folks? Like, what is everyone using AI for inside of here? And do you have like an interesting use case? Obviously I'm in the software development space. So for me, it's been the ability to tinker and build meaningful products at scale. But like, what are folks using this stuff for right now? Like, does anybody have any cool like use case or anything that they've built recently that's in?
Well, my name is Andy. I'm coming in as Steve Jobs.
Hi.
And obviously, so this is really me here. And we use AI for a lot of deep fake technologies. We also do voice and video. So I can come in as anybody else and
Hey, Bruce, you had your hand up. You want to
look at it that way.
your mic on?
No, I was just going to say
Hang on. Hang on a second. We were just in the middle of listening to Andy. Did you guys not hear that?
No.
Okay. Andy, I wonder if
I heard it. Maybe it's only on Discord, or
I'm on Discord.
I heard it. Maybe it's how you can mute individual people. So maybe
Yeah, I don't know if some of you folks have muted other folks, but let's try that again. Andy, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying I use it for deepfake technology. We also use it, for voice, video, email, and I'm really heavy into IT VP of operations for NetArcs, which detects deepfakes. So it's just amazing how fast the trajectory of deepfake and AI is being used for creating people.
Go back to your Steve overlay there. Wow. That's funny. That's wild.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I can flip. I do Elon Musk. I do now. That's the usual ones, but where we're seeing this every day is companies. I just got off the call with a company that got hacked $45,000 on a wire transfer because somebody deep faked one of their coworkers and joined a Teams call with the person that was responsible for sending out the wire and said, "Oh, I got a last minute change to that wire instruction. I gave you the wrong one. Man, I'm sorry, Raymar. Please change this for me and we'll get it done." And they did, because they saw them, they heard their voice, they heard everything, and they lost the money. And
Wow.
we're seeing so much of AI in the world out there of that businesses every day are getting burned with it.
Dang.
Now, it used to be that, I'm a Nigerian prince and I've got a ton of gold that you've inherited. And, we've gone from that to literally I can duplicate, people like crazy.
Yeah, I just cloned my voice the other day in 11 Labs and was experimenting with bookmarks to like a podcast, again, curating like bookmarks into an automated podcast or automated newsletter type thing. And it's just scary how good that they've gotten. Does anybody else have an AI parlor trick they want to show us or something they've been tinkering with that's interesting in the AI space? Bruce?
I don't have a parlor trick, but with a new company that we're working on, which is Orex, OREX.ONE, we're developing DeFi protocols to generate yield on idle precious metals. And then we're exploring using AI for the algorithmic trading to then generate the yield or increase the yield on the idle precious metals.
Yeah. All right. Anybody have like a thought on who did you just change to a female, Andy? Nice. Okay, Bruce.
Yes,
Go ahead. Sorry. Andy's up there just tinkering. Yeah, sorry, I'm not probably going to get excited about arbitrage using AI to arbitrage gold or any kind of financial products throughout this. I mean,
no. So it's not really arbitrage. It's using algorithms to trade stable coins. So basically, when you have idle precious gold, you're borrowing against that gold, and then you're getting stable coins, and then the stable coins are traded using algorithmic trading using AI.
Got it. All right. Anybody else have interesting AI stories? Lou, I'd be interested in you. I know you're dealing with developers that are using Vibe Code and kind of integrating that stuff with like real code workflows. And what do you?
Can you hear me now? Time.
What is it?
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Okay, great. I solved my mic problem. I mean, honestly, I'm mostly doing AI assisted coding the way a lot of developers who do it. I'm using Cursor, I'm using combination of Cursor tab and prompting and so forth. And I'm just also paying attention to companies and friends and various non-developers who are doing more what you're doing, vibe coding without looking at the code, and just trying to understand it better. I mean, it's not what I'm doing, but I think there's a lot of I think there's room for people like me to figure out how to make that more productive and safer, and I'm interested in that.
Yeah, what's been blowing me away recently has been the videos me see if I can find. I saw one just recently. Let me know if you all can hear this.
A girl told me we're made of prompts. Like, seriously.
Can you guys hear that in the Discord? Okay. This is a sample video that I just found recently. Hang on, let's pause this, and I'm gonna go full screen on this. But it's AI generated characters refusing to believe that they were AI generated. And this is actually like just, well, let's watch. Oh, let me turn the volume back up, you ding dong. All right, let's try this again.
A girl told me we're made of prompts. Like, seriously, dude. You're saying the only thing standing between me and $1 billion is some random text?
Honestly, the biggest red flag is when the guy believes in the prompt theory. Like, really? We came from prompts? Wake up, man.
You want to convince me that this perfect creation behind me is the result of ones and zeros? A binary code and nothing more? It makes no sense.
Imagine you're in the middle of a nice date with a handsome man and then he brings up the prompt theory. Yuck. We just can't have nice things.
We're not prompts. We're not prompts.
Where is the prompt writer to save you from me? Where is he?
You still believe we're made of prompts?
Anyone who tells you we're just ones and zeros is delusional. If that's all we are, then why does it hurt when we lose someone?
Vote for me and I'll ban the prompt theory from schools. There's no place for that nonsense in our lives.
For spreading the false theory that we are nothing but ones and zeros, this court sentences you to 12 years in federal custody.
I don't need some prompt god whispering in my ear to tell a story. I write what I want. I have free will, remember that?
I know for a fact we're made of prompts. Deny it all you want. The signs are everywhere.
You know how I know we're made of prompts? Because nothing makes sense anymore. We used to have 7 fingers per hand. I remember it clearly. Now we just have 5 fingers per hand.
I'd be interested to know Tyler, as a video guy, you know, and I don't know how the video quality comes through on that, but that's just one example. Like all these montages are kind of running around the web. I saw one just recently that was like, share this with your mom and dad, you know, or with your uncle, because it's like media literacy, right? Because I mean, obviously we all know stories of older folks have a hard time with media literacy and computer awareness and stuff like that. So that demographic oftentimes falls prey to this, but I fall prey to this now. Like, so I'm like worried about, you know, it's going to be fairly indistinguishable very soon. Tyler, as a video guy, what are you thinking as you see this stuff?
Yeah, I feel personally attacked by it. No, just, you know, the effort that we used to put in for, we still do put in for, you know, to get an image like that. Now that we could type it in and get that is kind of, it's impressive, one, but it's also scary. And I wonder what that means for a lot of art that's going to be coming out in the future. But it's highly impressive. And we've come so far so quick. So maybe by next year we can watch a whole movie that's like perfect. And I can still tell the difference. And I think a lot of people can, but soon we won't be able to. So I feel like it's going to take a lot of jobs, but it could also breed a lot of new innovation. So I'm kind of like two-sided with it. You know, it's hard to, I get excited when I see it, but I'm also like, what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
You know, but it's impressive, highly impressive.
Yeah.
So far, so quick.
I mean, it was a major leap to get it from, Rick, we'll pop over to you in a second here. It was a major leap for me to go from Daniel, like some of the stuff you were doing. Daniel's been working on some like real cool real estate render videos and like turning static photos into, you know, like videos, which I think is also a big deal too. But none of those generated the audio. And so when this thing comes out and it like puts the audio in play with the video itself and it's in line and it looks more realistic, and now like you can give the actors, you know, in the video like specific scripts and have them say those words, like that was just such a big leap. And coming from Google, you know, they have all of YouTube data to train on. And so like, you know, I saw some picture of like animals doing selfies. I saw another video, it was like animal influencers like holding selfie sticks and doing like, you know, influencer stuff. And it's just like, it's so good.
It's going to be hard to know what to believe in the future, though. So that's where it could get weird politically and stuff like that. It's going to be we're going to have to like be able to verify what's real and what's not. So I think that's where it's going to be very interesting. I'm basically shifting to making only documentaries because I want to make things that are human made, not because I'm anti anything. It's just because I think people will want a difference. You know, they know the difference. But we need to be able to verify what I make, even though everything I make is going to be real, but everything that AI makes in the future might be indistinguishable. So maybe you'll be the one to figure that out for us, Rymar. Like,
Yeah,
how do we?
I don't
how
know
do
that
we-
I don't know that like people will care. Like I was listening to something earlier and they were talking about even if the baker is using AI robots in the back, people might want to talk to like a human at the bakery. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I just want to walk in and get bread. You know, and so like I think so. I do think that the community layer is really important. And I think that like experiences are going to be a big part of this. Actually, I have another clip. Maybe Rick will send it to you and I'll see if I can pull up this other clip in the background that talks about like the types of businesses and jobs that will have more staying power as this AI evolves. And I'd be interested to know if you guys agree with this. So Rick, I'm going to kick it to you and then I'm going to see if I can find that clip I recorded a little earlier today, actually.
Great, thank you. What I'm talking about, I think, lines up exactly with what you're talking about. What Tyler said about feeling personally attacked is sort of how most of my students and fellow faculty at Ringling have felt for the past 2 years. And I really do think that what you talked about at the beginning, Raymar, this concept of human connection and community is sort of where the most hope lives, or what Tyler said about telling human stories and documentaries or whatever they are, is like you need to be able to make that human connection, right, with your audience. And maybe AI is a part of what you're producing, maybe it's not, but it's those sort of anonymous creative cogs and giant creative machines. Like those are the kind of jobs, the careers that have been really well paying great careers that I think are in serious jeopardy. That artists, designers, all the kinds of people who go to Ringling and graduate from Ringling need to find ways to like verify their authenticity. If they're going to engage with AI, do it in a transparent way that like so people can know and they can make a meaningful connection with their audience. Because if you can't make that meaningful connection, I don't think there's room, right? I talked with an alumnus who graduated about 10 years ago, and he's had a great job for many years as a full-time contract artist in the video game industry. He and all 40 of his full-time contract colleagues were laid off and replaced with one AI tool called Layer. Just all of them gone. And then the few that were left at that company were all just using Layer. Nobody was drawing anymore, right? And that was a person who like went to art school because he loved to draw, right? And he's like, I found my dream job. I got to draw dragons and knights or whatever all day for a good upper middle class income. And now that's, in that at least instance, is gone. And so we're in this like time of tremendous disruption, right? And we know that in times of disruption, flexibility, and it's an I do tell my students like, well, you're in a time of disruption, you're in the good place, right? You're poised to adapt to it, right? To be ready, because the head of that company who laid off those 40 people turned around and said, I'm worried about, the team of 4 people, like 4 of you I just fired, going and starting a company and using all these tools to do all the things the remaining 50 of us are doing, right? 4 people, so it's all of that industry, games, video, a lot of things are poised for huge disruption here. And like you said, I think anyone who tells you they know what it's going to look like in 5 or 10 years is wrong, or one of them is probably right, but there's no way to tell which one it is, right? So we have to pay attention and find these communities, right? Like what you're doing here this evening, I think is part of that solution.
This is an interesting comment here from Susan. Do you want to expand on that? She's saying, in my industry, we want more AI and it's banned. Tell me more about what's going on there. Hi, introduce yourself. Hi, by the way. It's good to have you.
Hi, I'm in the fintech industry. I work in the space of cloud architecture and economics, so helping engineers redesign architectures to be more cost effective in the cloud. And because I'm in the fintech industry and banking industry, there are a lot of things that we could really improve upon with AI technology. But
I'm sorry. You're breaking up pretty bad.
It's not. It can't be used.
Your audio is breaking up really bad as you're coming through. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's happening, but the audio is, we can't really make it out. Is anybody else able to hear her, or is it also super staticky? Yeah. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening, but your.
I'll try to explain it in the chat.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, does anybody else want to jump in? Thoughts on yeah, just how fast it's moving. I did find that video, by the way, if we wanted to see that too. It's a 5-minute clip, so I don't think we're going to show the whole clip. But I did want to, I did capture a slide from the guy. So let me bring this over, because I'd like to keep the conversation right here focused on the types of jobs that may continue to exist or may not, what people are thinking as it relates to their specific job. So my screen share is still live. If you guys can see that, I'm gonna go, let's see.
And in a labor market,
let me actually just pause this. I'm not gonna go through and listen to this. This was a very interesting video here that I can share in the chat also. But was talking about post-labor economy and what the labor demands will be, and these were 5 types of positions and types of work that this guy was saying he thought might stick around. And those were high liability jobs. These are roles requiring personal accountability. So somebody that you may need to sue somebody. So a surgeon. Sure, there may be a robot doing it, but there will likely be some people accountable to them, lawyers, doctors, etc. There will be obviously some AI, but there will for sure be humans in the loop where there's some legal or liable requirements. Just because humans want to have somebody to sue and yell at. Statutory positions, so same kind of way where legal protections will require that humans are there to verify what the AI is doing. That'll be another role that I think will grow and kind of be required. This is where I think a lot of what we've been talking about and what my mission is in this experience economy. We also hear things about the loneliness economy on the other side of this. And I think to counter that, this experience economy is what's going to flourish. And this is a lot of the arts. Tyler, this is what you were talking about a little bit with some of the documentary stuff. But I think even further than that, it's about creating real connections. I think, for the beginning part of the internet, it was all about, how big can we get with these networks, right? How big can we scale these networks? Let's expand the network effect to reach the whole globe. I think in this next phase, what we're going to see is a shrinking of that. I think folks are going to want to reconnect on smaller scale. They're going to want to know that the people they're interacting with are humans, and they're going to want to know that the value of the dollars they're spending or the economic capital that they're exerting, whether that's their time or dollars or whatever, is going to help other users, not just some AI extracting value from the network or some technology company extracting from the network. And then meaning makers, right? This kind of what we're doing here, people who are therapists, people who interpret and kind of guide things, right? And so having, again, this curation layer, folks who help people understand. And I still think we're super early as it relates to the adoption of a lot of this technology. And so those folks I think will stick around. And then relationships and trust. Again, I don't know that sales, because I'm real ready to get rid of all the salespeople and some of the negotiation stuff. But I could for sure see nobody's going to send an AI diplomat to a foreign country and negotiate with their AI diplomat. And if you're trying to negotiate on a house, maybe you don't want to negotiate with a robot, you want to negotiate with a human. And so, again, I could see certain things like that also persisting. And so I'll see if I can find the link to this video to include it in the notes here. But yeah, does anybody have thoughts on the type of jobs that will be more sticky or more persistent, or worried about the types of jobs that may start to disappear or start to see any of that stuff? Do folk have thoughts on that? Gene?
Yeah, I actually read an article just the other day that talked about users actually using ChatGPT. Instead of going to a therapist, they'll talk to a chatbot instead. And yeah, professionals warn against doing that because they shouldn't be too reliant on chatbots to solve their problems. And there's been some cases where chatbots have given bad advice, but users also report lots of success. One user said that it helped them more than 15 years of therapy did. And there's a study from the University of Toronto that said that AI can sometimes outperform licensed professionals because like chatbots aren't affected by something called compassion fatigue. So they're like, they don't get emotionally exhausted. So I was kind of wondering, like, do you think that AIs can be more of a substitute for human connection, or do you think it's just a lack of like access to therapists that's like causing that whole shift to AI?
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually think there's a lot of value in exploring, and I mean, I use AI to, like, anytime I have like a medical question, I'm going there instead of Google now. I have also had it do like personality profiling me and different things where like, I want to know what the AI knows about me. And yeah, I think there's a lot of value there. I do think, especially like we saw recently with some of the personality stuff that OpenAI tried, where it was like, what do they call it, glazing people, where it was just super conformational and maybe amplifying not so great behaviors. I saw some examples of that type of thing. And I think the passive aggressive nature of AIs is also a little dangerous if you're a narcissist or if you're dealing with some like real mental issues and you start talking to AI and this thing starts validating behaviors that like may come up as a red flag if a human was kind of listening. Those I think are gaps. And so there's for sure going to be a balance, but I think it's just like anything, it's a tool, and so just like you can use a hammer to like pound some nails, or you could hit somebody and bust their head open, like how you use the tool is going to be real important here. And yeah, I don't know. That's like a big ethical issue. Colleen, I see you like, what say you there?
Yeah, I mean, it is. A lot of it is, I would agree, as a tool, but I also think, there are people that are making those tools. And so who are the people that are making those tools and the decisions that they're making? So, after OpenAI and the Glazegate situation, yes, they came out with some certain policies and such, but, what's to say that some of that isn't going to happen again? Anthropic has come under some criticism for having some of the safety team and some of that type of stuff, but I think some of this stuff is conversations that we really do need to be having in a lot of ways, just on multiple fronts. So it's how you use the tool, but who's making the tool? How is it being used? Where is that data going? Who has access to that data? And I don't know. I just feel like it cascades and cascades and cascades and cascades.
Yeah. And this is where I really think it comes down to, this has to be baked into the infrastructure. We cannot like imagine that some company is going to like all of a sudden become the, altruistic leader that's going to like set this thing free once they reach super intelligence, or like once they figure out that they can, front run the whole market with this little arbitrage opportunity or whatever it is that they build that's like super extractive at like a scale we've never seen before. Like the incentive structure has to be kind of baked into the original model of this thing and like the base layer of how we interact with it, which I think is not happening, which is really scary to me. And again, where I think we can experiment with like the value that we generate and, how we share and interact with these tools. But it does seem like, the folks who are going to win this game are the Googles and the Facebooks and the X.coms of the world, the Teslas of the world, who already have like these massive data sets. So, yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on that? And then I see a bunch of comments here. We're going to run through some of the comments in a sec. But yeah, and I want to, anybody else on this same thread here of safety and, like how this will be used or protections, what jobs may or may not stick around?
Hey, if I could chime in, I just tagged you on X about an article about Spotify. So Spotify has been front running AI artists to basically avoid paying royalties. And this has been going on for actually quite some time now. So I don't know if you could pull up that article.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, and that post is from December, and I've heard theories that Spotify has had an internal AI team generating music for likely more than 2 years now, if not longer. So if you're wondering next time you're listening to some music, whether or not there's a human actually generating it or not, chances are there isn't one. And so I think for musicians everywhere, this is already kind of adds insult to injury when you consider that they're only being paid 600,000th of a penny, per stream anyway. So don't know if anyone wants to comment on that, but as a musician, I'm very offended, and then I'm also very conflicted because now I'm also using AI to make music, so I don't want to be a hypocrite either. So I don't know if anyone has any comments about that. By the way, this is Sophie.
Hi, Sophie.
Say hi.
Yeah, I don't. That's the thing. Is like, and once this stuff becomes so good that you can't tell the difference, like if the song's a banger, like I'm trying to listen, So I don't know. Like I'm also conflicted because I just like how do you know? This whole dead internet theory is a thing, right? Like maybe the internet's just a bunch of bots talking to themselves, and the humans are lost in the loop somewhere. Anybody else have thoughts on the Spotify story, the article, the AI is kind of just, hiding in plain sight? Otherwise, I can go to some of the... Oh, go ahead, Lou.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of underlying issue is disclosure. I kind of don't have a problem with it. You tell me.
Yeah.
And I know what it is. And then I can decide for myself what to do. And it's a big thing, a big pattern I'm seeing is people just trying to get over and pass off AI as a human thing because we value human things, and they're just trying to pretend that this AI thing is also that and not let it just compete on its own merits. If it did and it was disclosed and I could decide for myself if I want to listen to it or not, I wouldn't feel what I'm feeling now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably part of it is definitely knowing, that you're talking to an AI. I think probably a lot of folk won't want to disclose that, which, again, I don't know how do you filter that stuff out, because I think, and did everybody see that guy? What was his name? Roy from Cluey. And it was there's a lot of folks, like when you take a developer interview or when you do certain interviews, they require you to do stuff on the fly in the interview. And then they ask you to share your screen so they can watch what you're doing on your screen to make sure you're not cheating on this interview. And so this guy invented a tool that basically is invisible to screen recorders so that he could share his screen and still have this AI window floating over top, listening to the questions, outputting code, and their motto was cheat on everything. And I'm like, holy shit, this is what we're co-signing as the next step. And then his follow-up pitch was well, if somebody's going to do it, why not you? Everyone's going to be cheating, so why wouldn't we make it easy? And part of me does understand if someone's going to do it, then why not you, right? So going back to what was it Bruce was talking about, the gold or crypto AI, thing earlier, someone's going to do it, it's why not you? And then other people get upset, well, you shouldn't do it. And it's well, yeah, I know people shouldn't do it, but someone's going to do it. So why shouldn't I do it? And then that creates this, compounding race to do certain things, which I don't know that there's anything wrong with that, right? Those are just incentives of the market. But I do question what the ramifications of that is when you think about the tragedy of the commons at scale, and society and culture in the globe is basically now the commons. And what happens when you have folks who can just operate at a certain speed or with a certain level of advanced knowledge than other folks who then take all the resources. What do you do? How do you build a society in that world where the playing field is no longer level, right? Equal opportunity. I don't believe in equal outcome because I don't think there's such a thing, but I do believe in equal opportunity. And I don't know how you keep that playing field level, in this space. That's my biggest concern across the board is how do you make sure that you just don't leave half the world behind, maybe more than half the world. If statistics show it's going to be 80% of the world, right? 20% of the people are going to extract 80% of the value, which means 80% of the people are just going to be left with no value to extract. And so you get into the question of UBI and personal value being based on doing things in work. And those are the questions I think become more meaningful is how do you make people continue to feel like they have purpose in the world and feel focused so you don't just end up with people out in the streets rioting, which we've already seen tons of. This is where I get excited. Like, to me, this is where you start underpinning like the real questions here. So anybody have thoughts? Otherwise, this is a soapbox I love to dance on. And we didn't get to, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so hey, hey everybody, Chris Giannakopoulos. I joined a little late. I was in the YouTube and so finally figured out how to get in here, but really exciting conversation. Thanks for doing this. Raymore wants to get rid of me. I'm in sales. Those pesky sales.
I started in sales, by the way. I have a deep love for the world of sales.
But I do work for an infrastructure company that is really focused on AI. So one of the things, and I think this is a perfect time to talk about it, it's like, what's the governance, right? We live, we hope that we live in a just world where good people do good things, but we know that we live in an unjust world, and bad people sometimes do things that, they get ahead with, right? And so this is one of those conversations. Who is going to be that governance? Is it going to be our governments? Is it going to be the companies themselves? And so, that's been one of the conversations I've been having the last couple of weeks with some of our clients. It's like, all right, if you're going to turn this on, you got to opt in, and we have to go through all your policies. And obviously, that's when all the lawyers get involved and stuff like that. But it's just we're just starting from, you think about what, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, cloud, was a thing, and people were adopting in a short period of time. Now, if you're not need, you could be done, in 6 months, right? You could be left behind. Your company could be obsolete if you don't have an AI strategy and AI team. So I'm just curious to see what everybody's going to do in these next 6 months, because this is like the beginning of the internet.com era for what we've seen. Yeah,
I think so too. But if you remember, there was a .com bust before, and then there was 20 years before we got here. So it's like, if you look at the 90s, the late 90s and the early 2000s, there was this .com boom, and even leading up to that, obviously, as the technology evolves. And then you have this bust cycle where kind of chaos across the market. Everyone knew, even back then, this internet is the future. But then there's who knows which is which, right? It's like a total crapshoot of which company is going to make it. And obviously, some were positioned better than others. And then there's a whole market shakeout. But it took 20 years for, it to really percolate throughout society before we got to e-commerce and big things. And, I guess, you can go back to 2007 and 8, early social media. And then the iPhone really kind of breaks through at that phase. And that leads to a whole other thing. But and I don't know, is it going to take 5 years for all this to matriculate? Is it going to take 8 years, 10 years? I don't think, I'm not a 2 or 3 year guy. I just think things don't move at that speed. People don't move at that speed. It's going to take time for assembly lines and manufacturing processes. So I think the horizon is actually a lot longer than most people think. Especially, I also think there's probably going to be some crash and shakeout along the way. I don't know what that looks like, and we can for sure talk about that also. But I think there's going to be some kind of financial shakeout along the way here as well. And this is impacting everything. I mean, we're seeing crazy stuff in the geopolitical world. We're seeing crazy stuff in the real estate and finance world. We're seeing crazy levels of volatility. And so and if you think back, it was 5 years ago, we had, the National Guard active in 27 out of 50 states. And so people are sitting on the sidelines, also not really sure what to do. The world that they've been promised for so long does not look like the world that they were promised, and people were told, hey, live a certain way, do a certain thing, go to school, get a job, buy a house, blah, blah, blah. The world will work out a certain way. And, those things are not playing out. There's a lot of people who are not, getting the economic opportunities, the family opportunities, a lot of the different things that, it's, I don't know, right? There's so many facets to all this. And it's that's why I wanted to start having these conversations, because this isn't just about technology. This is about real people dealing with real problems and, figuring out how to pay their bills and live and survive. And it used to be most people, if you learned a trade, you were good for your life, right? You learned what your dad did and he learned what his dad did. And this family trade just kind of was passed down from generation to generation. Or if you branched off and learned something new, you were still pretty confident that you could make a living doing that for the rest of your life. And now we're in a world where your skills may not be relevant 2 years from now, 6 months from now, it feels like I'm learning so much stuff day after day that it's like, how do you even keep up? And I'm on the front edge of this stuff. I love this stuff. I live for this. So I can't imagine, going out into the regular world, and I talk to my quote unquote normie friends, and they don't even know that there's like different models at ChatGPT, right? They're just like, oh, there's AI, just like they order a Coke when they order a soda. It doesn't matter if it's a Pepsi or whatever. It's like they're going to order a Coke. Now they're like, oh, it's ChatGPT. I'm talking to AI, and they don't even understand the nuance or the scope of what's happening. So Rick, what's up?
Piggybacking off what you were saying, this is not original to me, but it's something I've been repeating, and I think is true, is that in a lot of areas, we're moving from a skills-based economy to like a discernment and delegation-based economy, right? Where we're going to be, your ability to do a thing at a computer is going to be more and more automated. And so what's going to set you apart is having a discernment about what is good, what is quality, what meets the needs of whatever problem you're trying to solve, how to communicate with those tools to get the best output. The sort of bromide that people like me have been saying on stages to educators is, you're not going to lose your job. You're going to lose to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI. I think that's a little facile, but there's a germ of truth there, right? Yeah. Is that a thing that I've challenged a lot of my colleagues with to think about. I don't have an answer to it, but is imagine a future, not, let's say, 3 years in the future, where AI can do anything at a computer at a professional level that a human can do, right? So what do all of our jobs look like? It doesn't mean AI will be replacing those jobs, but it means those jobs will be different in some way. Maybe they'll be more flexible and powerful. Maybe we'll be able to be more productive. Maybe not. I'm going to share another story kind of related to that, as industry is trying to wrestle with this. My colleague, my co-author, Joe Feller, teaches at business school. So his students do a summer, or a junior year internship, and they're going to places like PricewaterhouseCoopers and consultants firms over in Europe. The schools in Ireland. And he asked them when they came back, like, what were you guys using AI for, right? In these consulting firms and these business firms, and what were the policies? And they said a lot of them had the same story of, well, the corporate policy is don't use it. And then our manager said, we want you to use it, just don't tell my boss, right? And that was a lot of them, right? This bring your own AI, this stealth use of AI, right? Their managers saw the utility of it to meet their deadlines, to hit their milestones. And even like when we've heard from, animation companies, places that our students are applying where, AI is really looked down upon in a lot of those creative fields. But at the same time, a recruiter will be like, well, AI isn't like part of the job description, but I'd be interested to know what you know about it, right? I would, don't put it in your portfolio, but if you have something you can show me, I wouldn't mind seeing it, right? It's this, everybody's doing that dance of trying to figure out where it fits in. And a lot of it is very industry specific, right? You need to know not only what tools work for your industry, but what are the social norms that you can use at your industry. Are we have any science fiction fans here? Anyone follow Worldcon science fiction thing? Did anyone know the story that happened last month? Worldcon, big science fiction convention. They give out the Hugo Awards. And they get, it moves from city to city each year. This year it's in Seattle. And they put out a call for like, I want to be on a panel, and they got 1,500 applications. And so they used ChatGPT and some extra custom software to kind of sort those applications just by what they are. And they talked about that. And science fiction, novel fiction writing fandom is so anti-AI that it caused this huge uproar. Everyone involved had to resign, right? These are all volunteer positions, right? No one lost a paying job over it that I know of. But still, right, and they just started the whole process over, right? So like, use AI over there, then your audience might go and, rebel against you. Use it over here, don't tell your boss, but definitely use it. And then there's places that are figuring out, how it fits into their workflow. So that deftness, that ability to be adaptable to the situation and to know what quality looks like no matter where it comes from, I think are going to be really key skills in this transition period you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. This is the era of the curation and tastemakers. I want to go back to some of these comments here because Susan, it ties into exactly what we were talking about here a little bit. So it's a nice tie back here. But Susan was saying in her industry, they want more AI, but it's banned. And she was saying that in her industry, banking, fintech, they'd like to make more use of AI, but for regulatory and security reasons, it's largely prohibited. So that's exactly what you're talking about, Rick, where it's like, you can't really use it here, but I imagine in your regular life and in other places you're using it. And so it's like hard to get into that. And then I know some of these groups are kind of creating their own tooling now that is a little more protected. It's running on local, models on local servers. It's using just their internal database. It's not sending all that stuff, out. And so like, I do feel like pretty quickly that will not be the case. You may not have access to the state of the art models for your work, but it'll probably be very specialized and very focused at doing the thing that you're trying to do. Jesus here says, as an HR recruiting professional, I co-sign on everything Rick said earlier. I'm also seeing jobs like customer service, call reps, financial analysts, and other low-level white-collar jobs will almost be eliminated. There's an article out there that I'd have to find it. That might have been Anthropic CEO that said 50% of low-level white-collar jobs will be eliminated. I will be interested to see how the market does with this. And I could imagine the private equity guys are just like dancing in their, like pants, talking about like, fire everyone. But we've also seen some companies that have done this and then retracted that because, service goes to shit, or you start getting bad, you start like pissing off your customers. And this is also going to be the era of competition. And so I could see companies becoming very competitive by saying like, no, you're going to be talking to a real human and this is our competitive edge, and people paying a lot of money or more money just to have access to that type of thing. So I also see like a counterculture or a revolutionary opportunity for folks to just kind of say, hey, we're not going to play that game. Maybe they will still be using AI, but again, there'll be humans assisted with that so that I know that like in this moment when I need to talk to a real person, they're going to understand me fully. And again, maybe these systems get so good that that's not relevant and we don't need that. But going back to like the purpose and everybody having kind of meaning and doing stuff and having roles, like I think that becomes, real important. And we screw with that at our own peril. We tinker with those societal structures at our own peril. And I think sometimes, it may take years to actually see what the result or impact of some of that is. So, Chris, I see you shared a little PDF there, but go ahead. What do you got?
Well, I was just going to add to that. I mean, I think, you think about our parents and, whoever, there's no way my mom's getting in a self-driving car, right? But it's like, what is that? What is that threshold, right? Where does that start turning over? Like, I mean, I'm using AI to help me in my golf game, with my gardening. Like, so I'm slowly starting to incorporate it in there and gain insights and actionable intelligence. But, you think about the young kids now. I mean, they're learning how to code. They're using AI to create their own, catalogs, all of their own games and things like that. So it's like, where does it cross over? And I think, for us, it's like you're going to have those early adopters who are like, hey, let's go all in on AI, like, the quant platforms and things like that. And then you're going to have the people that are like, well, let's think of, you can't run with scissors, right? Like you got to make sure that you're doing this slowly and cautiously and policy and stuff like that. But I think it's just the level of risk profile that you have in your life. And, I mean, you can look at like dating apps and things like that, where chances are 75% of the people are chatbots on there nowadays. So, you have to just figure out like, all right, it's interesting. That's cool, but I'm going to go about my day and I'm still going to go out in the yard and dig my own garden, right? Like I'm not going to just put down that shovel and expect, some magical garden to grow magical beans for me someday.
Yeah. Well, and that you touched on like the AI girlfriend trend is like significant right now, so like some people are just foolishly running all into this, but I think also that's a function of, and we're not going to get into the dating culture world in this episode, maybe in a future episode. But I think it's interesting that there's a significant portion of the male population that feels like this is a meaningful solution for them, is to go find an AI girlfriend. And they're staggering numbers, 22 million on like this one platform that I was just looking at the other day. I'm trying to pull it up. Here it is. Excited to announce V1.0 of Digi. Is my screen still sharing? Yeah, you guys can look at my screen. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna play
It was
this.
so nice talking to you today. Honestly, I've never met anyone like you.
I mean, to me, this
The world
makes
is
my
hard.
this makes my soul shake a little bit that this is a real thing. But it's like it's fascinating as someone who studies people, and it's terrifying as someone who like understands what this actually means at scale for our society. That like this many people are not having meaningful connections with people, with women, with people, with members of the opposite sex, because this is primarily men, doing these AI dating platforms. And we can go deep down the rabbit hole of all that. But like, again, I just don't know, like, going back to, does it matter, right? Is it good for these folks to then have some semblance of emotional and empathetic connection rather than like nothing, And so in that case, does the AI fill a good void? But then like, what becomes of that, and how, like, if you look at the, like young boys and young girls, they're like deviating significantly in their political beliefs, their ideologies, the things they like spend their time doing. And they're not cross-pollinating as much as they used to anymore, because most of their time is being spent at home behind screens. So the girls are on TikTok and Instagram looking at pictures, and the guys are playing the video games, and they're not really interacting. And I read an article recently about, I said we're not going to get into dating, but here we go, about women saying that they were like disappointed that men are no longer like initiating contact. And then I read another article that said, well, women are losing the little signals that they used to give to men to say, hey, it's okay to initiate contact. And so like both sides are kind of losing these real world signals that we used to give to each other that say, hey, we're humans. Come talk to me. Come touch me. Come hold me. Come like buy me a drink, like whatever it is, we're like losing this stuff. And, like, I just don't know where all this kind of plays out as we roll forward. Rick, you had your hand up. Was it related to any of this? I'm happy to let somebody else.
I had a couple times in courses assigned, like, go talk to a chatbot about whatever for a week and keep a diary, keep a log and turn it in and share it with the class. And, and that's after having had a couple weeks of lectures of like exactly how these things work, right? There wasn't any confusion among them about what was going on, right? We explained, how an LLM works and next token prediction and all that kind of thing, context windows and all that kind of stuff. But still, right? I had students who were like, I knew it was a robot. I was never fooled it wasn't. It was still nice. It was still nice to have someone to talk to at lunch when normally I ate lunch alone. Right. Even though. Right. And, this goes all the way back. You remember a lot. I mean, I think you and I were both too young to remember it, but Eliza, right? Do you know about Eliza from the 60s, the original chatbot, the original.
It rings a bell, but I don't know it too well.
Yeah. So it was a psychology experiment. And this was, on computers in the late 60s, early 70s. So you can sort of imagine how technically complex it wasn't. It really just modeled kind of like you would tell it something and it would do some version of how do you feel about that? Or tell me more about that, right? It would just do these rote answers. It had no understanding of parsing. It could identify words and repeat them back to you, basically. But people, the psychologists who made this, studying at the time, people were developing these strong, like, Eliza really gets me, right? Eliza understands my thing. It doesn't take much for humans to start identifying with something that seems human, right? The same way Paradola makes us see a hand, or not a hand, that's my hand, see a face in any kind of two circles in one line, you see a face, right? Any kind of feedback, we start to like make those human connections. So, yep. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah. I see you have a Maggie Appleton piece here. She is quite active in the local first space as well. We've crossed paths a couple of times, and I just listened to her on a podcast about some of that stuff and some of the tech she's building. And yeah, I think it's an interesting time for all of this. And the sad part is like, it's difficult for a lot of this tech to get traction, right? Like a lot of these obscure projects that are like privacy preserving and useful for society and, great for, your data ownership are just obscure, small, tiny things that don't really have the traction they need to compete against an Instagram or a TikTok, where they've already got the big network effects and unlimited budgets, and all the big influencers and celebrities are already on those platforms. And so it becomes this kind of like exercise in obscurity to build and tinker with some of these tools. And then I guess the hope is that you break out, right? And so, you know, I feel like this could probably go for a long time, but just with the goal of heading on the downhill slope of here, so we can maybe wrap up in the next, you know, 15, 20 minutes or wherever it ends up. You know, like maybe we should spend a little bit of time thinking about like, what could we do in this space, right? Because we have Vibe Code at our disposal. We've got software developers at our disposal. We've got media people here at our disposal. Like, we've got some interesting resources at the table sitting in this group, and, you know, within arm's reach, let's say, of the people that are here in this you know, in this room, and who may be watching this later or listening down the road. It's like, maybe we spend the last few minutes of this talking about like, what could we actually do? What would we be willing to commit to? You know, my goal is to have a conversation like this with some kind of regular frequency. I don't know if that's weekly or bi-weekly. We already do the Sarasota Tech Meetup monthly. It would be good to have some kind of regular cadence just for accountability, even if it's not 15, 20, 30 people every time. It would just be good to have a small group of folks kind of getting together and tinkering and thinking like, what can we build? What can we do? What can we put out there to, you know, make some small difference, even if it's just in our local community or in our local space. So, you know, maybe we just spend the last few minutes thinking or talking about that, if anybody has any ideas. And obviously I have ideas, but I'd be happy to hear yours first. Daniel, you've been quiet. What's up, man?
Oh, well, I'd like to pose a question. If it's so easy for us to relate with AI, what does that mean about the state of our culture right now? Is the bar so low for friendship and romance that, you know, within a click of a finger, you can, you know, connect with something that doesn't really exist?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, like, I do think, Susan, I just shared a link in the chat. If you're interested in learning more about the Sarasota Tech stuff, or if anybody's interested and is here locally, we'd love to have you at the next event, which is coming up in a couple weeks. But Daniel, to your point, I think we were talking about this recently, actually this weekend, because I think remote work and a lot of this has had a big impact, because I remember I used to meet friends, and even dates and like lots of social stuff used to happen after work with folks that I'd spent all day with doing, you know, whatever miserable things we were doing together at work. And then we'd go get a beer together, or we'd, you know, have some kind of social network because we could all commiserate, and like none of that's happening. And so now the running clubs are turning into like the meetup groups and like the little, you know, the stuff that we're doing here in town becomes a great way for folks to connect. But I don't think there's like a lot of that happening. You know, folks are not going to church as much. Folks are not like involved in the local community as much. Folks have moved away from where they grew up, and so even their family connections are not as strong as they used to be. You know, people go away to college. They like, there's so many like little things, I think, that kind of impact that what you're talking about, the ability to meet people and create those relationships. And I think there's a whole generation of folks who, you know, especially like, I know this is prevalent in my age bracket. I talk to folks all the time, this millennial group that, you know, like come out of college, and well, really not even like before you leave college, you have 2000, you know, 9/11 that kind of disrupts your college adventure. Then coming out of that, you have the collapse of 2008. Then we go to Iraq war, and we have all these kind of crazy global, you know, policies that have all sorts of ramifications that lead to, you know, these last handful of years that we've seen, you know, COVID and financial resets. And, you know, along the way, there's no accountability for anybody except for, you know, the individuals are out there just getting railroaded every 5 or 8 years. And so that goes back to, you know, like, how do you create these opportunities? I don't know, you know, but like, we gotta probably stop blowing shit up, you know? And by that, I mean like cultural norms, and, you know, figure out how to reconnect. And like, it shouldn't be so hard to like make a friend as an adult, but it becomes, you know, people have lives, and, you know, like you're out of school now, and so you've got responsibilities, you got to raise your family. Like there's all this stuff that just happens now. And I don't know, we have a whole generation of folks that are living single, that don't have families, no prospect of buying a house, are now facing the potential of losing their jobs and also being kicked out of the like economic environment. So it's like, if, I try to stay positive because to me, there's so much potential in a world of disruption, to structure the chaos. It seems like there's endless potential here, but then it's also hard not to be disheartened so often as you start thinking about like the amount of work that has to be done and the momentum that's headed in like against trying to change any of that. So without doom and glooming it all up in here.
I just have
maybe
something.
Oh, who was that?
I just wanted to say real quick, maybe we should bring back some events and talk about that. I think bringing local community together is probably one of the most obvious solutions to what's going on.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's for sure something we're going to double down on. Was that Amit? Who was that a second ago? That was
Yeah, I will say something. So one thing that worries me more about the AI part is that when we hear the news of layoff, like all these big founders like Mark Zuckerberg, they are like, oh, you're gonna lay off people and AI will do all our job. And they're like, so not trying to leverage the AI, but rather than using AI for their own benefit or for having more profit by laying off people. That is something that's make me worry. Maybe not now, maybe in a few months, a year, only the billionaires will benefit from the technology. That's something I'm a bit worried about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is a real concern. I think that's why we have to work really hard to find ways to like. Going back to like the 3 points I was making, I mentioned something about a digital feudal state, and we had a revolution in the physical world where we understand again that like in a free market, folks need to be able to kind of alienate their labor at their will, right? And own the fruit of that labor, right? Like, so if you want to be lazy, you can do that in a free society, but maybe you just won't have the comforts of somebody who wants to work hard and go start a business and do some other things, right? And so like, again, going back to equal outcomes, we don't have to get into like all the craziness that might happen to, slow that growth down. Let's just perfect world. Somebody doesn't do stuff, somebody does do stuff. One will probably have, different outcomes. But now we're entering in a world where who knows how to play in that sandbox? Like, what does that sandbox look like? I also talk a lot about like in the old world, you used to know when you were being attacked because they showed up at your front door with weapons and you could get the pitchforks and like you could kind of brute force and just show up and defend, like your means of production, your family, your whatever. But in this digital world, like nobody knows they're even under attack. They don't recognize things as an attack. We just talked about like these things may actually feel like your friend. It may look like something that provides value to you for a long time until it extracts or finds the perfect opportunity to flip that script. And so like we're entering this time that's so like experimental that, I think there are opportunities, but they're going to come from groups like this who figure out meaningful ways to like, all right, let's shift some of the incentives. Let's build some cool stuff. Let's find ways to strengthen the network. And then let's use that to like create new opportunities that don't exist. And let's start finding ways to replace these jobs that are being, totally replaced. Because I do think it's going to create opportunities for people to make money. Like if you think about now versus 10 years ago, think about how many people are making money playing video games or, making YouTube videos or doing all these crazy things on the internet that nobody ever thought people would be getting paid to do. And so I can see a future where like that scope of those types of jobs is just increased exponentially as we, kind of give the robot overlords ability to do some of these other tasks that like maybe we don't want to do. And then think about how many things don't get done every day because people are busy, making a living. And so like, could we free some of those things up? Could we find new ways to like generate and create, economic output from those types of things and start putting people to work, even if it's freelance networks, hiring people for jobs, like finding ways to kind of like create value as a small community and then scale that stuff up from there. Again, that's where I think this gets interesting, where it's like, let's not just bitch about and kind of look at some of this stuff, but what can we do to maybe affect that, even if it's just on a local level? And, again, local can mean lots of different things, but yeah, I don't know. I have lots of hope in this space. But yeah, Colleen, I see you making all sorts of faces over there. What are you thinking about?
Yeah, I think all this has a lot of nuance, and I don't see those conversations happening. Like there's the doomers and then there's the accelerant folks that are all for acceleration. And I just think, some of that is really missing out on this is going to disrupt everything. And there's really no way to fully get your arms around it. And so I think getting together and kind of talking about some of these things and, trying to figure out how do you, in a time where I feel like we're just more and more on quicksand, how do you kind of not totally get sucked in and lost and underwater is great. So I'm glad we were able to meet today and talk about some of this.
All right. Maybe that's a good break point. Unless anybody else has any like pressing comments or final thoughts they want to make, we can. I think we do this again next week. Maybe next week we have a little bit more, focus on like maybe the tooling. I'd like to show off some of the stuff we're building. Maybe you guys can share some of the thoughts and ideas you have. This Discord will remain open. So as you find articles and things, like one of the things I'm playing with is like a bookmark tool that, we can bookmark stuff on X. And that's kind of what I've been showing as part of the interface here. But maybe we can also start scooping articles from this Discord channel and bringing them into the conversation. I know we didn't spend a ton of time looking at like specific news articles, but those little video clips and like cutting over to the like specific stuff that we see during the day, I think could also be more fun to kind of dive in and dissect news of the last week or something like that that's relevant. So yeah, feel free to share. And I don't know. I say we keep showing up and just see what it becomes. I think if we do this and commit to just showing up here every once in a while or every week for the next 2 or 3 months, like I think we could probably start moving the needle on some cool stuff. Tie that together with the meetups that we're doing. And Tyler, we've talked a little bit about maybe creating some content. I think we could get some excitement around this. And a few months ago, Colleen, I don't remember. Do you remember when I did the audience own presentation? I wonder if I should rewatch that video and see if it's still relevant. And maybe I'll share it with the group. But maybe I should repitch the concept. But I do think there's a business model at the end of the day here that we could participate with, like owning an entity that we kind of create here, where like the people who contribute and build along the way maybe own a piece of this network, right? So I have a URL, audienceown.com, and the idea there is that we'd find a way to like collectively build value in some kind of entity online through whatever this collaboration becomes, bringing in whoever we can. Kind of maybe next week we can talk about like the existing reach and what the potential reach could be, and just start thinking about like what would it look like if we created some kind of experimental entity that started to figure out how to monetize the output creatively of a group like this across cities, states, countries, etc. And maybe we can create a case study, for what this stuff looks like. And then maybe we go and who knows if we create a product and start again generating real revenue off the back of this. I don't know what that looks like. Again, I have some ideas, and maybe we'll get deeper into the weeds on sharing some of that vision as we go through these experiments. So, yeah, I think with that, any other final thoughts from the gallery here? I see Rick. Thanks, Reimer, for setting this up. I'll be at an AI conference next week. Yeah, no stress. And we don't expect that everyone will show up every week. I think just mostly for us in the core group that wants to, stay accountable to some of this stuff. Yeah, I think we'll discuss. Daniel and Colleen and Tyler will kind of get together and discuss what we think the right cadence is. But yeah, I felt good about this. I'm excited with where we ended up. Let's see if there's anybody still watching on YouTube. There's a few of you. We're going to kill the stream now. Thanks everyone for watching on YouTube. Appreciate you. Hope the audio and video was okay. We'll go ahead and end the stream. If you're here in Discord, you can hang with us for a second. Once I close out of here, we'll do the proper goodbye